Alright, cool, I'm on boat out!
What up guys, Zach D again. We're going to go over trimming out some devices, specifically switches. This bathroom is pretty intricate here. It's got a dimmer switch, occupancy sensor, single pole switch. So I got my dimmer switch here. I'm going to pull it out of the box. I like to carry a box around, throw my trash in. If you're trimming, you know, you got to go fast. So you get your trash thrown away immediately as you pull it out of the box. That's very helpful. So on this dimmer switch, you have a couple wires here. It's got a wire specifically for a three-way application. We're going to ignore that in this scenario. There's only one switch that operates this. So I got a red, a black, and a green. I'm going to tie my green to the ground. I mean, obvious to me, maybe not to others, but green usually always signifies ground. I'm going to twist the stranded copper from the switch around the leg just so it gets a better hold, stays tight. Again, with anything that you do with wire nuts, you want to get a small braid so that it does not fall off. You don't ever want a loose connection. So now that brings us to the other two. I have this wrapping black leg that is actually going to the light in question. So that's my switch leg. On these switches, typically the red is the load or switch leg. It's referred to as load, but what that means is it's the 14-2 that's going directly up to the actual light fixture, fan, whatever it may be. So again, I wrapped the stranded copper around just to get a better hold, get my wire nut real tight, get a small braid. All right, that leaves me with my last wire. I got this other black wire that's gonna go on the line, which is the power that has been made up for this box. See, I twisted that around. Now I'm gonna put my wire nut on. I'm gonna make sure it's tight. So now this is kind of a little finesse technique here. I'm going to take this full bundle that I just made, and again, you really want to make sure this 3-wire is covered up with its stock component, or if it falls off, put a wire nut on it. You know, you don't want the chance of that becoming live in the back of this box. I'm going to try to roll these up. You got to make sure you're looking at the words. A lot of these switches in single pole application have words on them, so if you just look at the words, if they're upside down, that should usually tell you, you know, you're putting the switch in upside down. Pretty easy way to identify that. Then I like to hold the switch right there. I like to get the bottom screw in just a little bit, and I get the top screw in. This is important for trying to keep it level. You want to hold both of the screws to one side or the other because it slides back and forth. What I like to do is I hold it to the right. I'm right-handed, so I'm using my drill with my right hand, so I take my left hand and push it to the right. But you can do any variation of that, but if you push it to one side or the other, that usually makes it to a plate and everything's going to look level and flush at the end. Now sometimes they twist, so you kind of got to look at it down the wall and make sure it's flush because you don't want it wonky in there. Now our next switch for this 3-gang here is an occupancy sensor. What this does is as soon as you walk into the bathroom, it's going to turn the overhead light on. You don't even have to press a switch. This one's a little different. It does have the 3-way application. Again, this isn't a 3-way, so we're not going to use it. I'm going to take this tape off, put it in my trash box. I'm going to pull all the other wire caps off that come stock on it. This one uses the neutral. So I'm going to do my ground and my neutral first. Remember, we talked about green being ground. If you're in a low light situation, really make sure you see the colors because that can be problematic if you don't. So I'm going to twist the stranded around the Romex wire. Make sure I get this tight hold on it. I'm going to grab my white wire, which is my neutral. I'm going to look for the white wire in the bundle. Sometimes I straighten these out when this thing gets stripped out. So yeah, I straighten the strand out and then I sit here and I twist it over like that just so it's real nice and connected. Then I seat my wire nut, you know, I press it down and then I twist. You don't have to go nuts, but you do want to get this braid so that it does not come loose. Now, that leaves us with 2 more wires. In this specific scenario, they've again identified the switch leg. Blue is usually signified on a switch as the load. So again, the twisted wire in this makeup and the blue wire from the switch are letting me know that that's the wire going up to the fixture. So I'm going to connect that. Then I got this black here, that's the line because it's the last one left. And I can see that this black wire is coming through the middle of that little bundle. So whoever made this up has told me that that's the power. So again, I'm going to twist this stranded wire on here, seat the wire nut, get a really, really nice connection here. And I'm gonna take the whole bundle and I'm really gonna try to make this neat and nice. I don't want someone to open it up later and be like, who the heck did this? This looks like trash. And you know, sometimes that still happens, and you do have to go pretty faster and trim because it's one of those things that, you know, it's pretty easy to learn, so you kind of got to try to emphasize some speed when you're doing this kind of stuff. Now, I'll just hold the switch with my left hand and get that first screw sank in. Then I'll get the top one. Then again, I push this to the right, so I'm going to push this to the right. And very slow. If you're using the impact, like I'm using the impact right now, I don't want to hear that impact click. Like that is not good. That means you're sinking this into the wall, which means it probably won't have the plate go on very nice. So I got my final switch, just a standard single pull switch. It's got your ground, it's got the line side, the load side. Single pull switches for me are pretty easy to identify which way is up and down. You need to know this. You don't want to put it upside down. Most people, you know, they see switches a certain way. So you have to make sure that down is off. Actually, down is off and then up is on. So what I do to remedy this, so I don't even have to think about it, I always do my ground first. I put my ground on. And currently when I put my ground on, the switch is upside down. So now that I got that secure, I got this red leg that's twisted and that's my load and my switch leg, and I got this black that's power. So next I'm gonna turn it over. Now it's right side up. I said that the bottom is usually line and the top is usually load. If you only have 2 wires on a single pull switch, it doesn't necessarily matter because it's an on-off switch, so just when you flip it, it connects a bridge between these two. But in an effort to keep things the same so we make fewer mistakes, I always try to do this the right way, you know, line, load. So now I got my load. They have these stab ins on the back. Some people don't like them. I've seen it to where an arc can pop these out. Some people really like to just put them under the screw flap, so that's something to think about. Now, anything with the exposed screws like this, you might want to take the time to put these screws down. Otherwise, it gives more of a chance for some of these ground wires, these exposed wires, to touch the screw, which will trip the breaker. So you don't want that. And I usually try to seat the wire, the bundle in the back like this, and I'll give it a nice fold like this, and then I'll give it a final fold like this. And I'll just make sure this ground's not going to be anywhere near those screws. So again, I'm going to start with the bottom screw, get the top screw in, make sure it's nice and, you know, level, flush. Sink it the rest of the way in slow. Slow, you don't want to go too fast. If you sink it in, it will not look good when the plate's on. Okay, so now I got it flush, seated, everything looks good. Another thing to think about is sometimes if these boxes are augmented by the sheet rockers, you might get one switch that's higher or lower than the other. Let's try this out and see if they did a good job. I got a 3-gang plate here. A lot of these Leviton brand 3-gang plates come with these little screw pouches. I got 3 of them because they hold 2 screws per pouch. So, you know, just kind of line them up like this. Make sure the screws are at the bottom so I don't drop them. I'll take my knife, cut them open like that, rip the top off. Hold them so I'm not drop. I don't want to drop any of this. It becomes really hard to find these screws when there's sheetrock mud and all kinds of white stuff on the floor. So hard to find these little screws. Okay, one thing, always test fit. If it goes on like that, boom, it's good. And then, you know, sometimes if you're really in a rush, you can kind of like finesse it like this. Turn the plate back around, you can kind of adjust them to where they'll fit in there. But I did this good enough to where it's going to line up. So I use a spinning flathead screwdriver. A lot of people call it different things, squiggly, twirly, whatever. But I really like these because they are built for speed. Now when I'm putting these screws in, I always make sure these screws are up and down. The reason for that is aesthetically, which, you know, the end result that the customer is looking at, they want to see these screws straight up and down. And the continued reasoning for that, this line is like all the lines, if you look at them, these lines are longer straight up and down. So symmetrically and aesthetically, if you have these horizontal, it's off-putting. And even people who aren't in the trade will look at it and it just doesn't look right. So, you know, I know everybody likes to be different and unique, but we're really providing a service. So, you know, if you're doing your own house or whatever, you can do them horizontal, you can do them however you want, but just know that if you don't have these screws straight up and down, whether it be a superintendent, a foreman, one of your coworkers, the customer, they're gonna ask about it. So yeah, that's a 3-gang bathroom switch, and it had multiple different switches. I'm gonna continue to make these videos like I keep saying. We'll go over a 3-way switch, how I hook that up, troubleshoots, the reasoning for where the wires line. But yeah, thanks, like and subscribe. See you on the next one.